Hey guys, welcome to the new episode of Diabetic 365, and today we have a very special guest, Cara. She has been type 1 diabetic from 25 years, and she is here to share her story. Hey Cara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So tell us your story, how you got diagnosed, at what age, and
I was 4 years old, and I had never had a problem as a child with being potty trained or anything along those lines, but I was sick a lot. I had a lot of strep throat and viruses as a young child. I think part of that had to do with the fact that I was a premature baby, and somewhere along the way, I started, actually a lot of kids will start sucking their thumb. I was actually sucking the two center fingers on my left hand, which was a very odd thing for me, but my parents couldn't understand why I was doing it, and I kept saying, I get water from my fingers. And that was the first sign, and then I started wetting the bed and hallucinating. I was having night terrors, and it's odd because being that young, I don't remember a lot, but I specifically remember one of my night terrors. I woke up, I dreamed there was a white tiger in my bed, and that it was trying to get me. And at 4 years old, that was very, very scary thing for me. And my mother actually thought that I needed a shrink. She took me to the doctor, and because she had no idea what was going on, and this was 1986, early 1986, and there weren't as many diabetic children at the time. There wasn't as much knowledge about the disease, but she walked in to my doctor, and Dr. Joshi, who still practices here in my hometown, and I actually went to school with his children, and he looked at her after talking to her for about 5 minutes and said, "We need to check her blood sugar." And when they checked it, I don't remember what the exact number was, but it was high enough that he looked at her and said, "Don't go home. Take her immediately to the hospital." It was actually the hospital in a neighboring town. It was a bigger hospital. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Well, can we go home to get clothes?" And he said, "No, immediately go to the emergency room." And now, when children are diagnosed, usually they don't even spend the night in the hospital. But I spent a week in the hospital, and after that, it was kind of life. Like I said, I don't remember a lot prior to my diagnosis, but it's kind of all I've ever known. And I grew up being the only diabetic child I knew. I knew one other adult type 1 diabetic in my town. I live in a very small town, and other than that, I didn't know anybody. It's different.
So you were the only one in your school, like a child diabetic, a juvenile diabetic.
Yes.
So how did they treat you, or how did you get along with the other friends? Like you have to be a little careful in terms of what you eat, or when you are playing or something. So how did you get along with the other children there?
Care then is a lot different than care is now. Control is tighter now. At the time, I know my blood sugars ran higher. We gave 2 insulin shots a day, so I did not have to have any insulin shots at school. We gave a morning and an evening. And the children, it was just kind of always a part of me. They loved, I'll never forget, first grade. They loved to come around my desk before lunch and watch me check my blood sugar. We didn't have a school nurse, so my teachers had to kind of pick up and decide what needed to be done. And but the kids loved to watch me check my blood sugar, and I actually have a friend that's still my friend today. She said that was my favorite part of the school day, was watching you check your blood sugar. And I never really had problems. My lows at school were pretty common, but they weren't ever really, really bad. I had one when I was in 8th grade that was terrible. I went into seizures and had to be taken by ambulance to the hospital. But other than that one experience, I never had really bad lows because I think my blood sugar ran higher because of the way care was done at the time. But people never really treated me any differently. One time, I remember being teased at school, someone saying, "Oh, you do drugs," because of the needles. And I just turned around and looked at him and said, "Yeah, so?" Because I did, and I knew it, and I knew what it was for, and it never really affected me, and I had good friends, so there was never a lot of bullying.
So what about college? You said you had a very rough weather when you were in college. You didn't have anyone to share your feelings or lean on to. So how did that go? How did that phase go?
College was really hard. It's a time in your life you're just getting away from home, you're just getting away from your parents. I wasn't far away, about an hour, but you're on your own. You're suddenly, even though I had pretty much always been in control of my diabetes, it was the time that there's really nobody over your shoulder. Hey, did you check your blood sugar? Hey, did you give yourself your shot? And I went through, I think it was probably my first period of diabetes-related depression issues, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't want it to be a part of my life. There were times when I was skipping insulin shots. You hear of people doing it to lose weight or things like that, and it wasn't like that for me. It was a control issue. It was, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to. And I would go months and not check my blood sugar. And at the time it was the early part of 2000, 2001, 2002. I didn't know a lot other than, the internet's used for schoolwork and research and things like that, but I didn't have any place to go. I don't even know that there was an online community at the time, and if there was, it was a very, very small one. And I really needed somebody to talk to pull me out, and I had a friend who listened very well. She was really probably my saving grace at the time, and it was a very tumultuous time for me, but probably the thing that really got me the most was that my doctor, I hadn't been in so long, they would no longer refill my insulin prescription. And he gave me one bottle, and he said, "You come to my office. If you don't come, I'm not giving you any more." Because he knew I'd have to go somewhere.
Exactly.
And because no one would see me. And I took the bottle. I made the appointment. I went in. He did my A1C and called me back in a week later because it had to be sent off. It was a small office. And he sat me down. And I've kind of grown up. He's from, sort of from my town. He had been practicing in my town for years, and I knew him outside of his office through the community. And he sat down and he said, "Your A1C is 12.1. Do you know how bad that is?" And I kind of said, "Well, I know it's not good." And he said, "Your blood sugar is running so high that I don't advise you finish college, because if you keep this up, there's no point. You're going to die." And I've had a lot of people tell me that he was too harsh, and I don't think so. I needed that. It started me. It didn't get me back where I needed to be, but it pushed me in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And I started trying. It's still hard because you still don't have the support system, the people to talk to, and at the time I didn't realize what I was dealing with was really a depression. but it started me back in the right direction. My A1C started to come down. It was getting back in the 9s, which now to me is horrible, but at the time it was a big step.
Big change.
Yes, and
so when did this turn around? Like, when did you start realizing that okay, this is not something I should give up, so I have to fight for it every minute, every day? So when did this everything turn around and take a good shape?
What happened is I met a girl in college, a lady who had an insulin pump. She was a type 2 diabetic, but she had an insulin pump, and she became a friend of mine, and I had never met anybody with an insulin pump before. And once I realized that it wasn't as scary as it was in my head, I decided I wanted to start the process of getting one. And I had a job that provided me with good health insurance, and I was in the process of, the doctor wanted the records. You've got to test 6 to 8 times a day, and I was in the process of doing that, and I lost my job. Mm-hmm. And of course, with the job goes the health insurance, and it put a delay for several months on my ability to get that pump. But when I got the job I have now, I got my job in January. By May, I was pumping. And with the insulin pump, I started researching things, and I ran across Carrie's blog. And I was obsessive at the time about checking my blood sugar with the pump. I wanted to be sure things were correct. I was checking 8, 10, 12 times a day. And also during this process, I found Carrie's blog. I found 6 Until Me, and realized she had this little tab that said blog roll. And I clicked on it, and there are hundreds of blogs. And I was
there's a huge family around.
Right. It was life-changing. It was amazing. And that's when I started saying, okay, not only have I got this pump, which gives me a reason to test and a reason to keep things good, I also have other people who are living through this too that I can talk to. And that, between those two things, that was the point that I said, okay, I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to win. Because, I don't want to die. I don't want the complications. I don't want people looking at me and going, oh, you poor thing. I don't want that. And I'm going to fight it as hard as I can. And that's what pulled me out and got me where I needed to be.